It's my pleasure to introduce our panel. We have three excellent HR professionals on our panel today. Michelle Gallardo from Dublin San Ramon Services District, and Teji O'Malley, Human Resource Organizational Development Manager at Central San, and Linda Charfauros, Division Manager in City of San Jose. And so welcome, ladies. I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Great. Thank you, Robert. Appreciate this opportunity to present for BAYWORK today. My name is Michelle Gallardo. I'm Human Resources and Risk Supervisor for Dublin San Ramon Services District, and I am going to go ahead and switch over to my presentation here. Hopefully you can all see it. And all right, everybody see that okay?
Yes, we do.
Great. All right. So just to give you a little bit of background about myself, I've been with the district almost 14 years. I've been in human resources for over 20 years. I worked for primarily private sector in my past HR life. So this is really my first public sector job. I started as an HR analyst. I was there for 3 years as an analyst before I was promoted to supervisor. I've had a great time so far with the DSRSD. So I'm going to go ahead and share with you some of our experience responding to COVID times. I just want to first say thank you to all of you for your service to public sector during this time. And I hope that everyone does continue to stay healthy and safe. So it's really important. But I wanted to just kind of share with you briefly who we are. Dublin San Ramon Services District is an independent special district. We provide water, wastewater collections and treatment and recycled water services to our service area. We have about 188,000 customers in total. And the service area that we provide coverage for spans 2 different counties, Contra, Costa County, as well as Alameda County. And you can see our coverage area here on the map. We have Dublin and San Ramon, which is our primary area for water services, as well as we provide wastewater treatment services in Pleasanton as well. So pretty good size area that we cover. Our organization has 3 primary locations for work sites. We have our district office in Dublin. We have our regional wastewater treatment facility in Pleasanton, and then our field operations facility, which is also in Pleasanton. Our regional wastewater treatment plant is both the water treatment as well as the recycle water plant. We have 116, actually now as of yesterday, we have 117 full-time employees. This is our organization and how we're split up. We have primarily 3: administration, operations, engineering. And we, at full staff, we would have 128. As you can see here, just to give you kind of an idea of things that are primary and key for HR, at least for now, we're hiring. And you may have seen, messages and ads going out. That's because we're doing a lot of hiring. We have increased our headcount over the last 10 years, as you can see here. And with that, we've also seen a lot of retirement. So while we're also increasing headcount, we're also losing staff. Those things compounding means that we're doing a lot of recruitment and a lot of promotional opportunities. This is really a key strategic item for the district. It's critical to our operations that we keep ourselves staffed. And you can see a lot of the hiring we've been doing here over the past 10 years. It just keeps, we keep ourselves very busy in the HR world. But we've come across some challenges actually in the last 2 years. In November 2018, we sustained a major flood in our district office building, wall-to-wall water. Happened over a weekend. A fire line broke under the building, and it was unusable. So we had to relocate about 50% of our staff to our field operations facility building in Pleasanton. This included all of our administration, our engineering, finance, all the staff there. Quickly set up boxes, anything we could grab that was salvageable, moved it over there. So we've been under an emergency situation really ever since November 2018 in that regard. And then in November 2019, we started to have the PG&E power shutoffs, and staff have been responding to those where affected in our area. So more emergency response efforts going on. And then of course, in March, the pandemic hits. Funny enough, we were scheduled to move back into our newly renovated district office building the week that the pandemic hit. So we had to put the brakes on that and quickly turn our attention to responding to the pandemic. Right away, we did have to declare a state of emergency. Our general manager declared that all employees at the district were essential. And we put together a coronavirus task force. The task force was comprised of about 9 staff members, headed by our newly hired assistant general manager. She had just started about 10 days prior to the pandemic. And so her first charge was to head off this coronavirus task force. The task force is made up of our operations and maintenance staff. We also were trying to fill positions in our safety department, so we didn't have safety staff. We quickly had to appoint some folks to head up our safety functions while this was happening. We quickly got that together. We also hired a consultant to help us come in and take a look at what we were going to need to put in place in terms of protocols. And so we started having weekly meetings. One of the things that we were primarily focused on was, of course, responding to compliance with the regs. And I'll have to say right off the bat, it was extremely valuable to have the networking that we were doing with our local partner agencies. Could not have done it without them. Every couple days we were exchanging, information about, what you were responding to and what we were responding to. And so, definitely a valuable resource of networking with our partners to try to respond to the ever quickly changing regulations. So we quickly had to put together plans and policies for teleworking, construction, pandemic, action plan, county required site-specific plan, and an exposure control plan, which we quickly had to understand that we needed. And typically, these kinds of things will take a while to put together. We were charged with trying to do it in less than 3 months, so we had to move quickly. Some of the early challenges that we experienced, of course, masks. At first, people were voluntarily wearing masks, some of them in 95s, and we only had limited supplies, so we had to make sure we were securing our supplies and working with staff who wanted masks and also within the regulations of those who should wear masks. And so that was an early challenge out the gate. Sheltering in place, of course, working from home and sending home our office staff. At first, it was a little spotty. We were sending a few people home, but then it was very clear in a couple days we had to send everybody home. So mad rush to get people the equipment they need to be able to go and work from home. PPE needs and shortages. I mean, we were working with as many vendors as we could and working with Cal OES to try to find out where sources were. But in some cases we were seeing if a local distillery had hand sanitizer and purchasing gallons of it, doing what we could to get and secure our PPE supplies. Was a major item. Illnesses, right off the bat, people were worried about, if they were sick or if they had it, and then what to do if they did feel sick. And early out, there wasn't a lot that we knew about, and we still don't even, but even, at the early weeks, there was a lot of uncertainty. And so working through situations that came up with employees and supervisors not knowing how the illness might spread and how it might affect their staffing. And then schools and daycares closed. New challenge, and a large portion of our organization has children, of school age. So this was a big impact. Staffing, making sure that we staggered schedules, distanced folks from one another, those who had to stay on site and work at the plant, and still there were some administrative staff that stayed on site, making sure that they had offices to work from. We let our temp staff go at the early start of the pandemic because we didn't know really, we wanted to make sure we were complying with regulations with the temp agencies as well. And we didn't know what that looked like. So we had to stop the assignments of any temp staff we had initially. We eventually brought some of them back once we had a better sense of the protocols that we needed to follow. Technology needs, huge, push for getting everyone the equipment they needed. And we were looking at all sorts of places to buy technology, Best Buy, Amazon, you name it, we were going for it. And of course, the CDC and the county and the OSHA and all the regulations changing constantly. You saw all the webinars. They were coming out constantly, and we were trying to follow everything we could to make sure we were staying on top of the regulations. They were changing. It felt like daily. And then we had in May and June, we had social unrest, which implemented some curfews, at least in some areas where we are, and some staff were affected by that. And then, the fear, the uncertainty, the stress of completely changing what we've all known and what we're comfortable and used to going into work and doing your job is all different now. Of course, the union, we met with them, and we were really pushing our messages out to our units as well as to all employees on a regular basis so that we could keep people informed about what actions we were taking, and where we had answers and maybe where we didn't. One of the biggest questions we were getting from folks is, when's this going to be over? We thought, the shelter in place is only through April, and then it got extended to the end of May, and then it got extended again, and then it was indefinite. People just kept asking, when is this going to be over? We did our best to help with relieving some of the stress. Some of the things that HR did, we quickly got ourselves up to speed on the emergency leave provisions that were passed by the federal government, and communicated those to everyone that this was available, if they needed it, as far as childcare, and being at home with school-age kids, as well as those who might be ill and be able to take advantage of some of these protected leaves. We pushed our EAP services early. We also, at one point there was an offering of meditations, guided meditations, and you could log in and do a virtual meditations. A few employees did it and really liked it and thought that was nice to have an option like that. So we had done that for a few weeks. Childcare resources, if we saw anything coming up in our area or areas where employees lived, we would push resources for essential workers who needed childcare. There were some special provisions there early on, and as well as giving letters to people saying that they were an essential employee in order to take advantage of some of those options. Healthcare, making sure people were aware of their options and treatment. Flex spending account changes, a lot of federal provisions that were being given as far as easing up on some of the restrictions on some of the things like flex spending accounts, 457 plans. We communicated those and took advantage of doing amendments to our contracts to allow for those benefits. We also have kind of a cool program at Dublin San Ramon Services District, is a computer loan program. We've had it for many years, but it became a really important benefit here during the pandemic. And so we expanded the availability of the computer loan program. to allow employees to be able to take advantage of that for buying equipment for their kids, and maybe 2, 3 of them, all at home needing computers. And the schools were, in some places, they were pretty slow at rolling some of that out. So we were able to help in that regard. Also, vacation leave, people were canceling their vacations because they couldn't go anywhere. So our general manager did relieve the maximum cap where people could accrue, so that people could keep, have a longer time to use their leave before they were maxing out. So we did that. And then our coronavirus task force recommended we bring flu shots on site. We hadn't done that for many years. We were able to partner and work with a local provider. They came on site and did a flu shot clinic for us. So that was great, and it was well received. We had a lot of people take advantage of that. Another, just a summary of things that HR did to support the initiatives during this time. Recruitment, and you're probably hearing this everywhere, is move virtual now. Doing virtual interviews. We had to work through a lot of kinks related to virtual interviews, but people are starting to get used to the fact that we're doing things by video. Socially distanced testing, that was also a new one for us, but we've had probably 3 now where we've been able to keep people at 10 or more feet away and still be able to do testing on site. So lots of changes there. We had to stop recruitment actually for a time while we were responding, just to make sure that, again, we were getting protocols in place and understanding what the regulations were before we were bringing anyone on site. Also, we quickly recognize that it's not just us shutting down, everybody's shutting down. The certifications, the State Water Resources Control Board, CWEA, all had cancellations on their testing, and it affected some people who were enrolled in tests and were getting ready to try to get their certifications increased and couldn't. So we've been working with certain employees who were in that situation to make sure that they don't have the impact of, something affecting their employment status because they can't get a recertification. We've been working and keeping an eye on that. Also, the new safety policies and communications, again, our safety staff, was temporary. We were trying to get those positions filled while we were working through this. So HR supported the safety group by, what we could do to help review policies and make sure that we could get those communicated out. Employee training as well, same thing. We can assist with that, helping people with the technology side of training. Staffing, we provided, contract reviews so we could get temps back on site. We also help with illness and leave case management to make sure that people weren't coming back too soon, and we still continue to do that and communicate to people, what their options are if they have illnesses in their home or themselves, and whether they can work from home or not. And then, of course, telecommuter support, big push. We continue to communicate virtual ergonomic assessment availability so people can have, a review of their home workstations, getting equipment to them just to make sure that they're functional. Okay, so some of the early observations. Interpersonal relations in a virtual world is quite a learning experience for everyone. Of course, you have to learn to interact differently. There's no eye contact. You can't see that I'm looking at you specifically when I'm on a web meeting with you. Also just some people are telephone people, some people are email people, and some people are just, they do better when they're in person. And so making the adjustment to everyone being virtual or being so spaced out has been an adjustment for some people who were typically used to one style or over another. Also, employee engagement, there was a craving, and there continues to be, for engagement with others because we're not seeing each other in the hallways anymore. It's sometimes, meetings feel forced, and they're not natural, occurring things. So, seeing people in the lunchroom. So, how to engage, it has been a big topic since the start of this, and how do we keep people connected? I even saw this week some emails within our management staff about, some games and some, healthy competition, something to kind of, keep people talking to one another. That's not so just work. We did a virtual celebration of someone's retirement. We had a Zoom celebration. So we're trying to make efforts there. Of course, reduced number of employee vacations means people are working a lot. So we are keeping an eye on that. So that's something that is top of mind for our management team as well. Moving to streamline use of technology. We had MS Teams as an item that was going to be rolled out by our technology department over a phased release, but with the pandemic, we moved that forward and everyone got access to Teams and we all learned to get up to speed rather quickly. And it's been a welcomed addition. I think people took to it really well and it has helped a lot in our communications. Also, telecommuting is working out for some areas. Some is a little more challenging just because of the nature of the work. So we've worked to try to see what we could do to improve where it's a challenge for people to telecommute, but that's still an ongoing area of interest for us. Also, what we've known about confidentiality in the HR world seems to have completely turned on itself a little bit here. Now, or we wouldn't ask somebody about, if they're feeling well or why. Now we're supposed to ask if they are feeling ill and what the symptoms are, and it feels a little counterintuitive. So we're working around how do we make sure that we're keeping our workforce safe and communicate that end of it, as well as trying to maintain medical privacy to the extent that we can. Contact tracing has brought up this discussion, and we continue to have this discussion, and our safety group is working on ways to do contact tracing and communicate to employees the benefits of that. Online training, not for everyone. But most of us can agree we like to go to training, and we like it because we can interact with people and have impromptu conversations, and it's a little more challenging in this format. We're getting used to it, but it's something also to keep an eye on too, because I think if people are feeling like, oh, online training, I'll just wait until it comes back. That may be a while. So we want to make sure we're keeping an eye on people getting to the training they need to continue to keep their skills up. And then virtual meeting etiquette. Funny stories abound here. I think in the first 2 weeks, I was walking down my stairs and I had my phone talking to the general manager and the assistant general manager, and I dropped the phone and it ended up right by my foot. So there was probably a big picture of my foot, like right on their screen. Dogs jumping on people's laps, all sorts of funny stories, but it's new. I mean, you're basically doing your own video presentation of yourself, and it's a different way of being aware. So just a lot of learning on that end of things. What we're doing today, we have still about 50% of our staff who are telecommuting. We have staggered schedules that are continuing for our operations staff. We've implemented on-call provisions for some of our operations staff that we hadn't before, which seems to be working out nicely to be able to provide emergency coverage. We have increased our cleaning and sanitation for facilities and vehicles, and we have a schedule for that. We participate in regular calls with county OES to make sure we're staying on top of updates, primarily in Alameda County, but we also keep an ear out for Contra Costa County because those two counties can kind of have interplay between them. And moved in office staff to offices where possible. So some staff did have to stay on site, and so we did what we could to make sure that people were just working in separate spaces so they wouldn't have to wear the mask all day long. We are continuing to communicate with our employees regularly. We have town hall meetings we host once a month. We push emails. We have our MS Teams page. Continue to push resources and communication to our employees is huge. We work with contractors and vendors to make sure that we get our services continued as an essential service provider, and then just learning to interact with each other in new ways. So this just a few pictures that I want to share with you as I finish up here. Just some folks working safely. This is our engineering group doing a pre-bid meeting, and our IT technician helping us out, and then flu shot day, and as you can see, everybody's masked up and doing their part. So just want to say thank you, and again, stay safe and healthy. Okay.
Great. Hi, Robert. It's Corey Lutz Powell. I'm sorry I'm late, but I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh,
I
good.
explained to them that we had some transition issues, and because we went from one event to the other, so we were expecting you.
Thanks. Do you want to keep rolling, or you want me to?
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, hello. Well, thank you so much, Michelle. That was what I caught of it was very good. So thank you so much. Next, we have Teji O'Malley. Hey, Teji, how are you?
Good. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. So Teji O'Malley is works with sorry about this. You work with Central SAN, and you're the Human Resources and Organizational Development Manager at Central SAN.
Yes. All right. So good morning, everyone. I think first I would definitely want to echo Michelle's sentiments earlier, is to thank everyone. And I think that, you look at all of our healthcare workers and our first responders and emergency and police, and I think people forget that we are right up there. We're in the forefront to protect public health and make sure we're doing what we're doing to keep everybody safe. And so I do think that was important for all of us to remember that and to thank everybody that's on this call, and to thank our industry. Just a little bit about myself. So my name is Teji O'Malley. I'm like Corey said, the HR and Organizational Development Manager here at Central SAN. I've been here about 8 years in this position, started at Central SAN, and my experience in HR, I've had about 20 years, and the majority of it has been in public sector, so a little different than Michelle's. I had a couple years in private, and the rest of the time has been spent in public sector. So first, I definitely want to say I'm very jealous of Michelle's PowerPoint presentation. Now I feel inadequate because I don't feel like mine looks as fancy. So I'm going to go ahead and, on that note, share my screen. Let's see if I can make this.
While you're doing that, I just want to mention that I'm loading into the chat field Teji's and Michelle's and Linda's presentation, as well as their project surveys, which are very thorough and definitely worth looking at. So I highly recommend. They'll be on our website soon, but you have the first crack at it.
All right, so, okay. Let me make sure. I'm new to Zoom. This is a technology learning curve with all the technology. We're mostly teams, but with the screen work?
Good. Yeah, you're looking great.
All right, okay, so a little bit about Central SAN. We were established in 1946, so been around for a little bit. We are wastewater services, approximately 500,000 residents and about 3,000 businesses, and we're in central Contra Costa County. So we have a little map up on the side that kind of shows our little service area there. We maintain about 1,500 miles of sewer pipes. We have about 35 million gallons of wastewater. We treat about 2.5 that goes towards producing recycled water. We have an amazing education communication group that does pollution prevention education for students from K through 12 to college to our community. And so we're very, very proud of that group. And then we also have other resource recovery services. So we do have a household hazardous waste facility, which is very, very popular and always our public darling. We love showing them off. And then we also have residential recycled water fill stations. So this is where you see those big tanks in the back of the truck where people come and get water so they can conserve water, and especially during the drought times. So currently, and I think for me, it's a little bit different. Instead of giving you kind of phases of what we went through, I'm kind of giving the glimpse, kind of overview of what's happening today. So obviously prior to COVID-19, our biggest change was we had no employees who teleworked. There was no teleworking policy. There was the technology wasn't there. And then you forward, fast forward from March to today, we have about 15% of our employees that are working remotely full time. So they're pretty much, they don't come on site and conduct the full scope of their jobs from home or remotely. We have 25% that are in our hybrid situation. So this is where they are, majority of the time they are working remotely, and then they come on site either on some type of rotation basis or on an as needed basis. And then we have about 60% of our employees on site, and the majority of those employees are the ones that can't work remotely from home. So they can't turn the wrench, they can't clean our pipes, they can't maintain our systems, our infrastructure. So that pretty much consists of our plant operators, our collection system workers, which are ones that are doing the cleaning and maintaining of the pipelines, and our maintenance staff, making sure that the plant and the pipes are running. Currently, and I think Michelle said this as well, it's been a whirlwind when it comes to information. So we're monitoring legislation, guidelines, whether they're local, state, agency specific, federal. I mean, it's anything and everything, and it's starting to, get a little bit more as we're navigating the new normal. It's not changing every day like it did, but I definitely will concur with Michelle earlier that it's been, those first few months was just every single day. We would do something, implement something, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, nope, that's different. And I think that's the other thing that I was laughing and nodding my head when Michelle was talking about this is utilizing and seeing what other agencies are doing. We have our network. I being part of the network that I think Michelle was talking about is, okay, Michelle, what are you guys doing? What is Contra Costa Water doing? So we were very focused on our industry. We knew what the county was doing. We knew what fire was doing. We knew what other services, but we had our own network, which I think was extremely critical in making sure that we were all on the same page, not recreating the wheel, which, we try not to do at any time, but even more so now when time was of the essence. If Michelle had something, the policy that she had implemented, I would literally steal it, slap Central Sand on top of it and say, okay, this is ours. So I think that was really important. And it did help us kind of, wade through all the stuff that was changing pretty constantly. We do have a COVID-19 exposure prevention plan, and it consists of multiple facets. So I think some of the things that Michelle, there's a component is a pandemic response plan. We talk about engineering controls. I'll talk a little bit about that in a slide or two. We have a matrix in there that talks about if you are exposed, if you test positive, where to go get your test, what are the CDC definitions of close contact. That document we first implemented in March, end of March, so it took us a couple weeks, and it was originally started as 3 pages. And obviously that tells you what information we had, which wasn't none, and we still don't know everything. Started as 3 pages. We've done 3 iterations of it, with the most recent that I just sent out to district staff yesterday, and that we're now at almost 16 pages. So we talk about, face coverings, how to put it on, how to clean the reusable ones, what are our guidelines when it comes to decontamination, if someone has symptoms, how do we clean, how do you disinfect, we also have site-specific rules. I think Michelle had talked about that. We had plans. So we do have our treatment plant is in Martinez, and then we have our collection system office, field operations staff work out in our Walnut Creek office, and then our administration is in Martinez as well. So we did, come up with, what are the rules for our collection system that might be a little bit different from our COVID plan. And we had to look at household hazardous waste, which collects, waste from the public. So we did come up with some of those types of very, very site-specific plans. That's included in the exposure prevention plan as well. Recently, we had 2 new bills that passed in the last year that now are changing even our notification requirements. So usually when, contact tracing happened, it would be the county calling us. Now some of the rules have changed where it's, as an agency, we have to contact them and say, okay, here's the reporting, here's what the, how many people have been on site, here's who the contact would be. We even have a whole attachment on how to do contact tracing. It's once, you get a positive test, we broke it down into Group A, which is our close contact as defined by the CDC, which again changes as well. And then we even have a group B that out of an abundance of caution that, hey, if you pass somebody in the hallway, or maybe you shared a workspace, you know, you won't necessarily be required to be off site. We do want to get you tested. And most importantly, I think our COVID-19 exposure plan, we've done several virtual trainings, we've done Q&A sessions, we send out regular updates and little snippets of, you know, hey, remember this. I think the most important thing is making sure that, you know, our folks know what the administrative controls are, is, you know, we cannot 100% prevent COVID from hitting our treatment plant site. We can't stop it from coming. We wish we could, but we can't. And so I think the message that we've been pushing is, you know, we have work, we need to continue to do that work, but we need to do it safely. And, you know, making sure you're wearing your mask, making sure you're 6 feet apart. We know that there's times that you can't, and we understand that. And we've seen that the more and more we push this, you know, communication of how to comply with the exposure plan, is we have seen in the beginning, we've had 3 cases of COVID positive employees. And each time we've had it, I've noticed that group A, which is what we consider our close contact, and we have to get them off site, get them quarantined, get them tested. And it makes me happy that that group went from the first time we did it, we had almost 35 people that had some potential exposure. And our first case was in April. And it was a huge group of people, and we had to send home and make sure we had emergency folks coming in to make sure that the plant was still running, and that, you know, our pipes were still being cleaned. And now that we've kind of pushed and it's become somewhat of the norm, is we have, the education is out there, we have seen that group get smaller and smaller. So the most recent we had was last week, and our group A was 3 people. So, I mean, it definitely is the education piece. And like I said, we're updating that plan very, very regularly. We have started and are going to continue to do this, engineering controls. So we have, like I said, 60% of our employees are on site. So we want to make sure that we did start implementing some of those controls for that group first. So this is anything that we could do to modify workspaces to ensure that we're complying with our exposure plan. So whether it's a social distancing, so we went out and, you know, we have signage everywhere, and I wish I would have gotten the pictures, because the ones on the floor took me a while to figure out what direction the arrows were going in. But we have paths of which way are one way, which are two way. We re-engineered our boardroom, even though our meetings are coming virtually, they're still open to the public, and obviously we keep in compliance with our local orders, to plexiglass. You know, our warehouse staff, you know, we put little stickers of where people can stand in the elevator. This is where 6 feet is, and only 2 people at a time. To break rooms, we put plexiglass in all the lunch rooms on the treatment plant site. And so that was our first priority. Obviously, wanted to implement those types of engineering controls. Touchless faucets, we did some, you know, changes to that. There's lots of little things that we're doing that we're going to try to keep, you know, COVID from being transmitted and minimizing our employees' exposure to it. And then the next group, obviously the 40% that are either working remotely or in some hybrid capacity, we're working on their spaces. So whether it's changing cubicles, some of it is we're building new cubicles to ensure that there's space, adding some height, you know, so that there's, I think the standard was like 72 inches. Excuse me, and to even changing the configuration. So instead of having someone sitting in this corner of the cube, we're going to have them face that corner. And that's our next. And it's all in phases. We are, like I said, I think the last bullet there is we're working on developing a return to office plan, but we will only do so when it's safe. And with just the, you know, recent uptick we've seen in the news lately, I'm sure we all are aware of that, is most of our state is back in that purple widespread tier. So again, that's kind of pushed off to the back burner. That is the plan, eventually to get everybody back to work, but only when it's safe to do so. And until then, we're going to keep making sure that the people that are here every day are safe to the best of our ability, and that everyone is complying with that exposure prevention plan, from the simple to wearing our masks and social distancing, to, you know, figuring out how to do contact tracing with us, with our safety group. So we're definitely updating that and continuing to educate our employees on those components. All right. So I did a couple of slides. The next two is just more or less, you know, the challenges that we've had. There's some, and I hate saying there's some benefits, and I know we're in a pandemic, but there have been some things that I think are good things that we've seen come across these last, you know, 10 months. And then also some lessons learned. I think for us, the first, and I don't think anybody will, you know, disagree with this, is it was chaos. Those first few months, you know, we were getting, you know, as HR, as employees, the unions, it was just, we were getting so much inconsistent, contradictory information from the federal level to the local level to the state level. So it would be like you know, we said, you say one thing and then you have to pivot immediately and say, oh, nope, that's the state order, but not the federal one. Oh, when the CDC says something different. And so being able to, for HR professionals, for us to be able to even understand, you know, what the information that was out there, and then to be able to deliver in some type of consistent manner to our employees was impossible. And so I don't blame that there was just this, you know, chaos that people were, you know, from every spectrum. It was tough. Those first few months, that was probably our biggest challenge, was just being able to communicate. And then, like I said, we were not a teleworking agency. We didn't have the technology. It wasn't something we were used to. We literally changed how we worked overnight, not only communicating, but then figuring out what information we knew about COVID and how it's impacting us in our local community. But then it was also communicating it to the employees when they're at home or via, like, you know, also the phone. Some people are email. So that was really, really tough for us. But I think as we navigate the new normal, we're getting used to it. We are obviously learning more about COVID each day. And so that is getting better. We are working, we started setting up, like I said, there's a task force, making sure that our message is consistent before we pass it on to the employees, making sure that we're all on the same page, and then also making sure the unions are on the same page. We are a unionized environment, with the exception of about, you know, 6 or 7 employees. The rest are all in a union, 3 different bargaining units. And so we want to make sure that they are same page as we are, because it doesn't make sense for us to then, you know, for them to pass on different information versus us, versus, you know, the GM's office. And so I think there's been a lot of coordination and labor relations. That's an important piece anytime you work in a unionized environment. But I think with the challenges faced with this pandemic, even more so, because they have a role where they're here to bargain and negotiate and ensure the safety of their members, which is the same priority for the district. That's our #1 priority, was making sure our employees are safe. And so it was tough to do that. And I think we're getting there. And it was pretty steady for a while. I noticed now we're starting to see a little bit of that, you know, what's going on, because now that the tiers are changing again, we're going from red to yellow to purple, and some counties are taking 2 steps back. And okay, you know, at least I have 1 county. I know Michelle has 2 different counties that she straddles. And it's tough to say, okay, well, what is this county doing? And one's in the red and one's in the purple. I'm seeing a little bit of that going back and forth, but, you know, at the same time, in the interest of public health, it's what we have to do. And we're trusting our public health officials to make sure that they're giving us the information that we need to employ at our agencies. So I think that was #1. And first and foremost was the communication. That was obviously a huge challenge. And then I think the second one for us was, you know, balancing employee safety while continuing to maintain those service levels. When COVID first hit, it was tough. It was tough for the, you know, with the talks with the unions, with our management, with our division managers, of what is considered an essential service. You know, it was where we had employees saying that I'm not essential and I need to be sent home. And then there were some employees saying that, you know, oh, well, I am essential and shouldn't be, and I need to be on site. They were literally sat next to each other. I mean, there was a lot of that going on. So we had to make the decision. And I think what we started off was out of an abundance of caution and being more careful. And this is before we had implemented all our safety protocols, was, okay, what are our core services? You know, we need to treat and collect and treat wastewater. And so what we did is we limited in the beginning, even a lot of our operation staff, we did send home on rotations because we said, okay, what is the least amount of staff that we need on site to keep our plant running? And started off with that, and then as we implemented our safety protocols, our COVID exposure plan, we, educated our employees on it, what the requirements were, learning more and more from the officials, public health officials. We have started increasing those service levels to where, like we said, 60% of our operation staff is back on site, and they're, making sure that the plant is running. Maintenance and construction projects did resume as well in a safe manner, compliant with our plan. We started bringing most of our public facing, some of those groups started opening up. We had our household hazardous waste facility, our residential fill station, we had closed for almost 3 months before we reopened those. So we are slowly getting there to back to our pre-COVID service levels. Still not there yet. On some, we do have our lobby and general area is close to the public, so our permit counter, we have folks come and drop their plans off in this little box we have outside, and then our permit staff comes, brings it in, checks the plans, and so they have a little stuff going there. We implemented, and we talked about the technology, is we implemented PayPal so that they don't have to come in and use their credit card to make payments. I mean, so those kinds of things, if we can maintain those service levels that we can still provide, but not have that face-to-face contact, we have continued that. The third bullet point, this was again a big challenge for us, was acquiring and deploying that technology. Like I said, we were not an agency that promoted telework. We were not an agency that was used to teleworking. IT had nowhere near the resources. We were the same way, running around, when this happened at Best Buy, Amazon. I think we're fighting all with each other, supply chain issues. It was just as hard for us to get the technology, the hardware and the software in the beginning as it was to get our masks and our sanitizer. Supply chain issues we were facing were very, very broad. That was tough. And so we kind of did it backwards. We sent everybody home pretty much, and many people as we could, and say people were taking their desktop monitors. We saw people in the parking lots loading them into their cars because we didn't have the laptops and the mobile technology for them to be able to take and at least easily take. And as time went on, we slowly started doing that. So we did. We went a little backwards where we sent the employees home first. We wanted to be in compliance with, our shelter in place. We wanted to keep our employees safe, both by being at home as well as limiting the number of bodies that were on campus. We knew some people had to be here. So our intent was to provide and make both sides of that safe. So then it went to buying the resources, and I think we had people that were literally in line, IT, our help desk techs, to even some folks from the operations side, is wherever you could find a laptop, snag it. We were able to move around a little bit some of our purchasing rules, because obviously our GM had declared a state of emergency as well. So it did give us some flexibility in, acquiring and deploying some resources. So that, I think, was the first. As time went on, got better. We were able to get everybody a laptop. We were able to get the software implemented. We pushed out these virtual trainings in town halls. We did Q&As where our IT staff was amazing, where they were out there showing how people to use MS Teams, how to use SharePoint, a lot of this collaborative software that, honestly, I'll admit, I didn't even know existed. So it was fast, it was quick, it was, they were very agile in getting that stuff out to the employees. And then the next piece was training everybody, getting all the employees trained, what the resources were, how to use them. And then, okay, now let's use it. So that was definitely a challenge. And it is interesting to see how, more and more formats, we have Zoom, and MS Teams is competing with Zooms because now we have a gallery, and here's all the things that we like and don't like, and SharePoint. And so it's a OneNote, it's been interesting, and I think we're still learning it, but we're adapting and have adapted pretty quickly. So that's our into the next one. This has been a challenge. like I said, in no particular order have I listed these. I'm going to say there are times, depending on where we are in the pandemic, whether it's month 1 or month 10, that some take a little bit more of a priority over the others. But just like in our nation, in our state, in our communities, we have an extremely wide spectrum of opinions on the severity of COVID. And that, I think, has gotten a little bit more divided as we progress in the pandemic. Well, we have employees that don't believe that this is anything more severe than the flu, and that the district's response and required protocols are completely blown out of proportion. And they're vocal about that. And then we have the other side of that spectrum where we have employees that are terrified still to set one foot on site for risk of exposure. And then we have obviously a larger group that's probably somewhere in between that. I think navigating that has been tough because it is where, you know, we had to take a step back and say, okay, well, we understand that this is how you feel, but this is the district, this is our agency. We're doing the best that we can with the most knowledge that we have to keep our employees safe. So that's been a challenge. And I think for the unions as well, because they have to represent their members. And when their members are saying, I don't want to have to wear a mask when I'm outside. I don't want to have to do this. This is ridiculous. And, you know, like I said, the other thing I've noticed a lot too, and maybe Linda and Michelle can talk about this, is in the beginning and even now, in some cases, depending on where someone falls on that opinion spectrum, I have, oh my God, the person next to me, their nose is running. You need to tell them to go home. Or, I mean, you have a lot of that going on to where I know people have come and said, oh, I think I have symptoms that, you know, so-and-so said to so-and-so, but I'm not going to use my sick leave. So I'm fine. It's no big deal. So it's interesting trying to navigate that as well. And then I think Robert brought this up earlier, is communication was bullet number 1 of how to communicate consistent information to everybody. But I think this virtual communication has also, it's been a huge plus. Obviously, it's one of our benefits. It's allowed us flexibility to make sure our employees can work remotely and can work effectively, efficiently, in ways that we didn't even think we could. But you do. I think when you have virtual communication that is 100% virtual, you lose, something is lost in translation. And I think that's where we are struggling when, especially on issues that are nuanced or complex, we have noticed that there's been some more confusion, difficulty getting that message across when it's 100% virtual. So that's been a challenge. I said that fits in my both benefit and a challenge category, but that's been, you know, it's body cues. HR, we do that. You know, we know if someone's upset, we could tell by their body language. We could tell if someone's paying attention or engaged, and try to focus the way we're communicating, knowing our audience, to make sure they're engaged. And I think that's a lot more difficult to do now with it being, everything being so virtual. The last one, and I think it's more of a recent kind of challenge, is I am seeing a lot of behaviors that I think are indicative of pandemic fatigue. This is from ranging anywhere from, you know, even employees who believe COVID is severe and believe what we're doing is maybe less stringent compliance with our safety protocols, less stringent compliance with our exposure plan protocols, to we're seeing a lot of stress when it comes, you know, for employees, they're feeling social isolation. I mean, I think we've all of us probably on this call have gone through some level of that or another. So we're seeing some of that, the stress that's coming from that. I have seen employees struggle to maintain, especially those that have children and young children, that have to maintain, you know, continuing to work from home, but then at the same time also, you know, making sure that their kids are doing their distance learning. So we've seen that, you know, people that are working from home, we've seen, you know, ergonomic, you know, issues. We've seen employees, you know, complaining about other employees on things that normally I wouldn't see. So I know for our agency, at least, I have seen in HR a huge uptick in employee grievances, to complaints, to lots of requests for stress management tools and tips. That's something we've been really trying to focus on. Whether, I think Michelle talked about a couple of things, is being flexible with some of our, policies that, I know HR, we love our rules. We like them, we like consistency, but we have had to be a lot more flexible with our leave policies, with our vacation usage, with our, those types of things, to where or offering EAP services. We had actually got our EAP plan was getting really overwhelmed with the amount of calls, with questions. So we actually got another EAP that was a virtual format called Talkspace. We implemented that. That went live in September, where employees can do it via text, via phone. We've been very, very happy with that. We got our wellness program provider to come in, which right now we have John Muir, and they were excellent in getting us webinars on everything from proper ergonomics, working from home, to breathing, the meditation. I think we had a couple of those types of seminars. I have taken advantage of some of those as well. So we definitely are seeing that, and
Just a couple more minutes. Just a couple more minutes.
Reminding employees that, hey, this too shall pass. Benefits, I'll be quick. I know we talked a little bit about the technology. There's a lot more out there than I thought was ever possible. Our agency, extremely agile, tough in the beginning to get used to it, but I have seen a huge uptick in the technological skill set of our employees. For some of it was brand new. They didn't use it. So we've definitely seen some of that grow. We've seen a large number of increased participation engagements. And now that we can have virtual meetings, virtual events, town halls, less logistical planning involved. You don't have to drive. You don't have to, put on shoes. You don't have to, do any of that. You can just log onto your computer and then go into those meetings. So we have seen an increased participation and accessibility. Same concept. It's just employees it's easier to access for each other to be able to talk and ask questions. And I did have some lessons learned. I did a project survey. If you want to take a look at that, it's probably a little bit, it's much more detailed than my presentation. That's in there as well.
Thank you so much, Teji. Yeah, that was really great. For a few slides, you really filled in. That was really great.
The challenges was a large portion of the last 10 months. So yeah.
Yeah, I can see. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And now we have from the City of San Jose, Linda Charfauros, Division Manager. So, hi, Linda.
Hello, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I just have to say this, I'm sorry, because I've been mindful of watching the time. So I know some of you may have other meetings to go to. You may be hungry. It's lunchtime. So I'm going to go through my whole presentation. I knew I was last, so I believe it's a little bit shorter, but I'm not going to be offended for anybody who has to leave. So with that, I'm going to ignore as the number of participants go down, and I'm just going to tell you about my agency.
Also, Linda, we did have it scheduled for an hour and a half. So.
Oh, did we? Oh,
yes. So we're in good shape. Yeah.
All right.
So we'll be able to take those. If you have questions as we go, also anyone, I posted all the presentations and the excellent project surveys, and also we'll have a Q&A at the end.
Okay, so with that, as Corey mentioned, my name is Linda Charfauros. I work for the City of San Jose, so a little bit different than the experiences of Michelle and Teji as HR managers for their districts. In my department, I oversee the department's human resources, budget, fiscal, and IT activities. So the City of San Jose, on Tuesday, March 17th, all city facilities were closed except for the airport. Everybody who were essential employees were expected to work, but if your work could be done remotely, that was the expectation. But certainly employees whose work couldn't be done remotely came to work. Our city's Emergency Operations Center, or EOC, had already been fully activated. And so as we work through the months, while continuing to provide those essential services to the community, the EOC staffed up further with employees from other departments who at that moment work wasn't considered essential. And I think all of us, it kind of like makes us all feel bad when we think about that designation of essential worker. But I think for the HR staff that's here, we understand that it doesn't mean that everybody isn't important and their work wasn't valuable. It simply meant what were the key services that needed to be provided to the City of San Jose residents immediately, not long-term. Someone else had already said, you know, whoever would have thought from March till November that we would be continuing to shelter in place. So people who weren't designated as essential were kind of grabbed up by our EOC to provide help with food delivery to our community, to arrange for shelter for unhoused. The EOC worked with contracts and vendors and with Santa Clara County to stand up community COVID-19 testing centers. And then other city staff were redeployed to help manage the procurement of PPE and to start tracking how we were spending that money in anticipation of grant funds becoming available. And as I mentioned, the department I work for is the Environmental Services Department. You know, and as that says, we provide the environmental services to our community. We co-own with the City of Santa Clara, the San Jose Santa Clara Regional Wastewater Facility. It's the largest advanced wastewater treatment facility in the Western United States. We serve over, I'm sorry, I'm distracted by somebody wants to be admitted, so I'm going to do that. We serve over 1.4 million residents in Santa Clara Valley. This regional wastewater facility also produces approximately 11 MGD a day of recycled water, which is distributed through the South Bay Water Recycling. The City of San Jose owns a potable water system, San Jose Municipal Water System. It's one of 3 water companies in the City of San Jose and serves approximately 100,000 residents. We also manage some very big garbage and recycling contracts. We have a robust stormwater protection program. And in 2018, the City of San Jose adopted the Climate Smart San Jose Plan, which is a community-wide initiative to reduce air pollution, save water, and improve the quality of life. Not surprising, our department's mission is to deliver world-class utility services and programs to improve our health, environment, and economy. And I particularly love our vision, which is a place where people do great work and make a difference. And then, so much has changed, right? Since shelter in place, since COVID reared its head. My colleagues have talked about what their agencies have done. We've done all of those things as well, so I'll try to make this brief, but it is important. Staff safety was a priority. At our regional wastewater facility, on any given day now, there are approximately 300 people on site. It is a huge site, but still 300 people at work. How do we have them come to work and be safe? Health screenings happen before you enter any city facility, taking your temperature, asking if you've had any COVID symptoms. Those questions have changed. Again, as my colleagues have mentioned, you know, as soon as you adopt procedures to implement guidelines from your county, the guidelines change. And I know it's just because our health officials are doing what they can to keep us safe, but it is a challenge when you're implementing those to keep on top of all of that. We had, when I say closed our break rooms, well, really what I mean is we removed the tables and the chairs, which sounds really heartless, but we needed to make sure that people didn't congregate in our break rooms. You can go in, you can nuke your lunch, you can grab your bag out of your refrigerator, but there's limits to the number of people who can be there at one time. You know, and you know, fortunately we had a lot of nice weather and people might be sitting outside at least 6 feet apart eating their meals. Inside our facilities, plexiglass barriers and COVID signage is everywhere. Markers on the floor, no more than 2 people in an elevator at one time with X's where you're supposed to stand. We've installed some touchless infrastructure that we would have liked to have put in our City Hall building when it was built, but it was value engineered out. So now, you know, you wave your hand under a sensor and the water comes on as opposed to touching those handles. Cloth face coverings and social distancing is strictly enforced. You You know, obviously with some of the work, you know, maintaining a facility such as the regional wastewater facility, there may be times when people have to work closer together than 6 feet, but that is the extreme exception, not the norm. The other thing that we've done, and I'm sure everybody else has done as well to ensure staff safety, is we have some quarantine requirements that can be challenging. Now, certainly, if someone's been exposed to COVID, there's rules about quarantine away from work. If your work allows you to work remotely, we're going to let you do that. But, you know, if you're a mechanic at the regional wastewater facility, chances are, unless you have maybe some SOPs to write, there isn't much you can do from home. So you're on sick leave. For travel, we're following our county guidelines, which is if you travel internationally, when you come back, you're required to quarantine for 14 days. So a 1-week vacation could turn into 3 weeks of your vacation time. We certainly let employees know ahead of time if they're going to have to quarantine, and then they can decide with their managers, can we afford for them to be gone for 3 weeks? Do they have enough vacation time to do that? If you're exposed, of course, you can use your sick leave. If you were exposed at work, we pay for your time off, but fortunately that's been really the exception. What we've really found is the things that we've put in place to keep our staff safe are working, and we don't have any record of any positive COVID test as a result of contracting it at work. So, you know, again, as you know, I mentioned, you know, March 17th, everybody go home except for those who absolutely couldn't do their work anywhere else. So what we did at our regional wastewater facility and our laboratory, which supports a lot of activities, but most prominently the regional wastewater facility and our municipal water staff, is we adopted minimum staffing. And, you know, that was manageable for maybe the first month. So what people would do is we would stagger who came in. People switched off back and forth, but over the long term, it wasn't sustainable. So at this point, all of those operations staff are back 100% working the normal schedules because we still needed to do, you know, preventative maintenance, all those other kinds of activities. And, you know, we couldn't do that for 8 months, you know, so that's where we're at now. We've got a picture here of one of our mechanics. You can see he's got on a cloth face covering. There's nobody around him. So in addition to the staff that's working on site, we, I would say at this point, almost all of our employees, and I forgot to mention this, but in my department, 550 employees, almost everybody is back to work full-time, either on site or working remotely, with the few exception of we've got about 15 employees who have been redeployed to the Emergency Operations Center. But we've done things to make working remotely easier. Our IT department made a large purchase of laptops, which have been deployed to employees to be able to work from home. And then we ran out of those. We do allow employees to take home their desktop computers or their monitors or their keyboards, and we have a checkout policy. We didn't implement that right away. That was a huge change, you know, that was never done. We did have a teleworking policy in place. Some employees took advantage of it, but that policy required that if you're going to work from home, you have all your own stuff, you know, and it's changed now. You know, it really has changed because of that. The city was already working on business process improvements to automate forms and things like that. That certainly ramped up much more quickly because of COVID and shelter in place. And within my department, we are shifting, albeit not maybe as quickly as we should, to more online services such as using ShareDrive and SharePoint and OneDrive for document management and collaboration. Oops, okay, next slide. So recruitment is an area that definitely looks different now. You know, there are no more in-person meetings between recruiters and hiring managers. All that work is done as collaborative. You know, we're using OneDrive to share documents. We're using Microsoft Teams or Zooms for virtual meetings. We have conference calls. The interview process, you know, there's pluses and minuses to these Zoom interviews. You know, certainly for a candidate, there's no traveling for the candidates. Sometimes our panelists come from outside of our organization, and so they don't have to drive to our site as well. So in many ways, it can be very efficient. But, you know, the negatives are things like video and audio challenges. You know, we've all experienced, you know, wobbling video audio, so you can't understand a word someone's saying, frozen screens, those kind of things. So those can still be challenges, although on the city side, that has improved greatly. But there's still that loss of personal connection. I mean, for instance, right now, I can see one face. I can see Corey's face. Now, part of that's my choice. I found it distracting to have the gallery view up while I'm looking at my presentation. But, you know, as I don't recall if it was Melissa or Teji said, I have no idea if Corey's looking at me. You know, you can't really tell from a video screen. So you definitely lose that eye-to-eye personal connection. I know, thank you, I see you too. You know, there's no more hi, welcome, shake your hand, please have a seat, smiling, trying to help put your candidates at ease when they come in. With that, at the regional wastewater facility, as I mentioned, our operations staff is all on site. So those interviews are generally conducted in person. There are some cases where people have to do practicals. If you're an electrician coming in, you know, we have a practical so you can demonstrate that you know, besides telling us you can do it, show us you can do it. So we do have some of those. So that certainly works better for our operations and our field staff. But to do that, you have to fill out a questionnaire that asks about all the different safety measures that you put in place to keep your panelists, your staff, and any coming visitors safe. You know, it takes a little bit of time. You know, it takes some time for our safety officers to complete that, and then for our city safety officers to review. Sometimes they come out and they come out and inspect what we've said we've done. Not that they don't believe us, but just they want to see it. So it's not one of those things where we can just turn on a dime and say, we're going to have in-person interviews. It's something we have to decide at the beginning of the process. So we have the time we need to get approval to do that. Well, on the plus side, one thing I've noticed is that we seem to be getting more applicants. That's great for us. You know, we just as you, we compete with the private sector for our candidates. To a certain extent, we compete with each other as well for those specialized things. I mean, there are not enough wastewater engineers in California, right? So you know, and we're always hiring for those. So on one hand, it's really sad in terms of the economy and businesses shutting down. But on the other hand, we're a great place to work, you know? So if we can get some people in who never considered public service before, never considered working for a government agency, I think once we get them, they're gonna find they don't wanna leave. So if you had interviewed with us recently.
2 more minutes.
Okay, so this is what it looks like if you interview with us, right? Here's 4 panel members. Or you're in a meeting with 4 other people and this is what you see. So this is how we collaborate now. And so again, looking ahead, it's the same as with everybody else. We are looking to maybe do our health screenings online with our employees self-certifying versus having to do it when they come in. We're not there yet. Our EOC is looking at how, when vaccines are available, how can they help distribute through the community and the city workforce? And I don't think we have answers yet for what is the new normal. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Linda. Excellent. This is great. It's true. I mean, and with the uptick now, as we've been mentioning, it's actually become more of you know, that shifting ground again, where you know you don't feel like you think you're going one way and then you have to go another, and you pivoting constantly. Can you have vertigo, like me? It's a wild time. So if you have any questions, feel free to type them into the chat fields, and we would love to have a bit of a panel discussion here. So anybody that has any input or any of that, you guys were so thorough that I had a lot of questions down, and you ticked most of my boxes, you guys, which is actually very good. I do have a question here that actually Michael had asked me to ask you, which is, what impact has COVID-19 had on your internships and other educational work? And this is for everybody. And do you see the potential to resume internships in the spring, or if we have a similar pandemic in the future? So Teji or Michelle or Linda, any?
I can speak for Dublin Santa Ramon Services District. You know, I mentioned that early in the pandemic response, we did have to stop temporary employee support, you know, initially, because we weren't sure, you know, how much space we really needed, and we were looking at essential workers. But we have since brought some temp staff back, and we have had some discussions about internships in different areas of our organization. We don't have anything going on effectively now, other than we do host some OITs to get their contact hours, if you will. So we do have them coming to do that. But we, you know, I think now we're in a better place to be able to consider internship opportunities and partnerships where possible than we were early in the pandemic.
Excellent. Teji, do you have any comment there?
I think you know, when March, April hit, we did, you know, the goal was to send as many people home, but we still actually had a couple of interns that stayed through that first wave. So we normally hire between 10 to 12 per fiscal year, and we actually have 5 that are still currently employed, and that we do have them working in an internship capacity. I think it's been more difficult for our operations staff, I think, because they are it's just crazy, and they just don't want to take on anything additional right now. But we still actually have a couple of our interns going. We hope in the spring to, you know, go back into full year to hire. Hopefully, we're still recruiting for our internship that starts in January, our spring internship program. So we are doing that. As for the education, I think, you know, our communication group has been excellent on switching to virtual platforms when it comes to education for schools. We have teachers that we work with in our service area, as well as our plant tours. Our plant tours are all virtual. We have a little 360 interactive video that they did, and it's very cool. So we're definitely using some of those tools. Not 100%, but we're shooting to do that in spring.
Excellent. And Linda, any news on interns? Do you know of anything?
So for our office staff, the interns that we already had we're continuing to use, although for a period of time they were still on the books, but you know, not giving any assignments. For operations, though, at this point we don't have any plans, and I don't see that changing until we're at a point where you know, more people are coming back to work. You know, as I said, you know, so many people already on site at the regional wastewater facility, and maintaining social distance. So it makes it a little bit harder, you know, to bring on, you know, interns kind of thing in that kind of an environment.
Yeah, I would imagine. Just a little BAYWORK.org post here, plug. We have actually Central San and Dublin San Ramon and the city of San Jose use our job posting, free job posting. I posted it there. So I'm assuming there are also HR people on the line here, and you're all encouraged to post all your job openings there, and we get them up very quickly. So I hope that's somewhat of a help. Oh yes, and then Levi Fuller from Dublin San Ramon has a question. Actually, he had one. Oh yes, he wants you guys to speak to the challenges related to COVID protocols between district staff and contracted employees or contractor employees.
Yeah, we definitely have continued to work through that. You know, early on, we had to make sure we were communicating our requirements for contractors who needed to continue to come on site, and make sure that they were also communicating their protocols to their folks to us. And so there was some interplay there. There, you know, even with the temp employees, I was, you know, often reaching out to our contact there to say, you know, hey, if someone's got, you know, an illness, this is our procedure. And, you know, what is your procedure in terms of call-in? And we have had a few of those situations where we had to refer people back to their organization to follow their procedures related to safety protocols. But you know, there's also the instance of when you do have contractors on site and you observe them not following your own protocols and how to manage through that. There have been some instances where masks weren't being worn, or, you know, things of that nature. And so I think it's just, there's some more vigilance around it now. And, you know, with the pandemic continuing, I think early on people were really wary of wearing masks, and we had a lot more incidents of people being seen not wearing their masks. I think now it's sort of taken hold. People are just understand that the mask is here. It isn't going anywhere. We're not going to be, you know, mask free for a while. But it's still an issue that we work through.
Right. Yeah. I know about, my husband works in wastewater, and the same thing with the contractors come on site, and they're, you know, you don't really have control over them, but you know, they are working for you. So that can be an issue. So I don't see Teji or Linda checking in. So did you have anything you wanted to add?
I think it's similar to what Michelle said. In the beginning, a little bit difficult to coordinate that, hey, here's our protocols, here's our exposure prevention plan, and this is what you're responsible for adhering to, and then referring them back to theirs. So what we did is, once we started really getting the policies developed, is that part of every contract now, they go to their safety orientation. So for them to even work on our site, they have to agree to certain protocols that we now have incorporated into every contract. So that they have to report if someone has it, if someone's ill, someone's exposed, and then that's part of their safety orientation they go to before they'll even be allowed to work on site. A little bit less control when it comes to the vendors, so like UPS and mail and the water delivery, the uniform cleaning companies, you know, people that come and take our waste. So that's a little bit more difficult to coordinate, but we are able to at least get something more in writing with the actual contractors on site.
Got it. And Linda?
No, we have, so at a regional wastewater facility, we have a very robust capital improvement program happening right now. And, you know, all construction is now happening again. So we have contractors on site every day. Nobody gets to our gate without health screening. We can't force other contractors to implement our policies, but we do enforce them when they're working for us. You know, so our contractors are aware of what our requirements are. We have consultants who travel from a different state to come in. We consider that their commute, and that's not a problem. But, you know, again, it's the, you know, the questions they get asked, you know, have you had any of these symptoms, and you have your poster with the list within the last 3 days, or anybody in your household, or, and the temperature screening. So, and, you know, I don't believe we've really had much pushback, you know.
I think that's really great that you're doing those temperature screenings. I think that's, I don't know if everybody's doing that, but I think that's a, you know, it's a real good way to, you know, make sure that once people enter your area that they're okay. At least, you know, they haven't exhibited a temperature yet. So that's great. I also see that I think have questions coming in, and I want to get to them all. So, and I know we're getting close to the end, but Levi asked, interview questions often deal with safety issues. Any questions relating to COVID-19, such as working on site in social distance protocol environment, in a social distance protocol environment? Anything along those lines?
We haven't really asked interview questions, but we are starting to look at our job postings and the communications about our openings and the expectations people may have about what they're gonna be encountering when they work for our district. So we're getting better about making sure people understand whether or not teleworking is available or not for a position, or that there'll be on-site work required, you know, maybe staggered shifts, those kinds of things. So people are aware. We're doing better about that. We weren't at first, but now it's almost imperative, because people will ask you if it's not posted.
Yep. And are you, and they'll ask you again, even if it is posted, right? But that's fine. Are you finding people, Sue Murphy, this is a great question. Hi, Sue. She kicked us off today, yay. She said, are you finding people are retiring sooner than they originally planned? Or perhaps the opposite?
Teji, I did respond back in the text group, but we did have a few. We had about,
Thank you.
I want to say maybe 5 that probably leave earlier than anticipated that retired. I mean, they were already planning to, maybe instead of in a year, they left in March or April. But a lot of them had underlying health conditions. And I think that there was more of, hey, better safe than sorry. We want to be able to enjoy our pensions and not have to worry about any health complications. So we did have a few people that did leave earlier than they had anticipated.
Great. And Linda, have you guys experienced any?
I haven't really noticed any big uptick in retirements. You know, it's hard to say. I know I got a notice yesterday that surprised me. But, you know, I'd never, you know, we certainly don't ask our employees, hey, when are you planning to retire? You know, so, but it had never come up either. But I wouldn't necessarily think that it's related to this. If anything, I think being able, for office workers to be able to work remotely could conceivably have them even pushing off retirement. You know, a hesitancy to travel, you know, maybe do some of the things that you thought you were going to do when you retire. And right this moment, it feels like if you retire, it's like, wow, you know, you can Netflix during the day instead of at night after work. But, you know, I don't know if that would be enough of an incentive for me to go, you know, I'm ready. So we really haven't seen that.
Excellent. Okay. Well, we're actually pretty right on the money here. We're right at 12:30. So I think I just want to thank everyone, Teji, Michelle, and Linda, for putting so much effort into this event. We really appreciate it very, very much. And I hope the people that are online were able to check out the project surveys. They will definitely be on our website, and I know y'all spent a lot of time answering a lot of questions, so thank you very much for that. That really is awesome, and everything, yeah, because you guys are so very busy. I'm glad you made this a priority, because we're delighted to have you.